11:21, 21 minutes after 11 a.m. on May 16th, 2010, edition of Doug Pagitt Radio. I'm chatting with Joel Vestal. Joel is the founder and the current CEO and traveling nomad of a group called servelife.org, servlife.org. You can find a link to that over at Doug Pagitt Radio Facebook fan page, facebook.com, Doug Pagitt Radio. And Joel has been talking about what they're doing at Serve Life and how they're creating a global community of folks from around the world in developed nations and in developing nations to try to solve the problem of human trafficking, of hunger, and of leadership development inside of countries where that's not easily done and not easily accomplished. And this is an organization that Joel has started, and the thing I appreciate about it, among other things, is that it wants to invite people in their current state of life. And it's called Serve Life because it wants to serve the causes of life around the world. And Joel's going to give a call to you to think about being involved in what he's doing. You can do that tonight. He's going to be together with us over at Solomon's Porch. He's going to be telling a little bit of the story and recruiting people. But also, if you want to be involved in what's going on, go over to servelife.org. Or if you have a question for Joel, you can give a call in at 952-946-6205. And Joel, you were talking a little bit at the beginning that you want to create a global community. And then during the break, we were talking about what this kind of global work has brought for you. And you were in a get-together a couple weeks ago with the Dalai Lama. And so it involves people that are, somebody who's 22 years old and says, I want to spend 2 years of my life, and people who are big cause and big political leaders, even like the Dalai Lama.
Exactly. I think one of the things that's needed for the Christians is Christian community in not only the West but the world is that we have interfaith relationship, interfaith dialogue. There is commonality, there's common graces we can come around to solve some of these large global issues. Let me explain a little bit more in just unpacking briefly. I know our time is limited of what we do. Sometimes people respond and say, "Well, don't you do too many things? Trying to end poverty, trying to solve children, trafficking issues and training leaders." And my answer is no. It is all integrated because the idea of what work and what it's kind of sometimes hard to get around the mind of a businessman or a stay-at-home mom and. From a fundraising perspective or just telling our story. But the idea is that we want the gospel of Jesus Christ is a holistic gospel. It's not just proclaiming, it's not just sharing, but it's demonstrating, it's living, it's physical, spiritual, emotional, mental needs of the person. And that is something that even in the church around the world has, there's problems of that in the States, how that's still very segmented, but even around the world, the church is sometimes does not embrace that. And so our whole theme and thrust is to train indigenous leaders to be in the communities, to start churches, to train them to holistically look at people, at their community. Mm-hmm. We're talking about communities of primarily absolute poverty, people living on $1 a day. There's an estimated 1 billion people on our planet living in this reality. And so the reality of trafficking, the reality of poverty and hunger, when you have 5 children and you're a rickshaw puller and you're making $20 a month in school fees or a certain amount of dollars, you have to pay school fees. All your kids can't go to school. So that 10-year-old girl is a potential victim when that man from Delhi comes in a nice suit and says, I can give your daughter a job in Delhi making soccer balls. I'll give her 5,000 rupees a month, and I'll send back you 1,000 rupees a month. That illiterate parent who loves their child, cares, innocently, naively agrees and sends that daughter. Well, that daughter then goes to Delhi, is forced into a brothel, servicing who knows how many men a day. And it is estimated that 300,000 girls under the age of 16 are in India, from Nepal, in this reality. So what we do is we take Americans, because we in America still can be in the world. We can still live incarnationally. We can still live, not bringing our culture, not dominating, but serving those who are there. So what we do is we work with our indigenous staff, and our U.S. staff primarily functions in the role of our children's sponsorship program and our what's called the Serve Life Hope Fund, which is our micro-enterprise initiative. Now, we are not a world vision. We are not a hundreds of millions of dollars of organization. We're a very grassroots organization. And so what we are doing is working in the communities where through our indigenous leaders And we ask people as we speak and we travel, sponsor a child. Every American should sponsor a child.
And so when they're sponsoring a child, and sometimes that allows that child to stay home
to
go to
school primarily,
as opposed to being sent off to become.
Yes, there's kind of three-pronged approach to trafficking. There's preventative, there's intervention, there's rehabilitation, and there's a lot of groups that do both, and all of them, and we are kind of involved in all of them as well. Mm-hmm. But preventative initiatives are many times the most effective, because if you can have that child in school, and education will break the cycle of poverty, and because that father and mother cannot afford the school fee.
Yeah. So
our international staff interact with that, and then our Hope Fund is a powerful, amazing thing we've done. I was just in Cleveland, an Episcopal church. They raised over $6,000 in Thing, Nepal. To start a Hope Fund. And so there's this whole idea, the absolute poor in the world, they don't lack the ambition to get out of their situation, but they lack basic capital.
And you suggested that there was some of these different 12 villages in Nepal are going to receive a Hope Fund. That's something you set up.
40. We have 40 targeted villages where we have 40 of our staff.
And a Hope Fund is something that an organization or a
church or
could contribute to create their communal connection with that village and to bring about that change. So people think, look, I mean, good Lord, human trafficking and stopping world hunger, I mean, that seems insurmountable to a lot of people. But you set up a means by which people here can be connected to a village somewhere else, be connected to children in a holistic way, and you handle the movement of money and resources back and forth and invite people to come in and see what's
going on. I was in the middle of Sudan one time, and a Sudanese came to me, and you know Sudan's been in a horrific plight of injustice. And the Sudan said, any man can live 40 days without food, 4 days without water, 4 minutes without air, but no one can live 4 seconds without hope. And that's always stuck with me. Martin Luther King said this. This has been a thing that stuck with me so much. Because what happens for us as Americans, we get into this paralysis. You know, it's the deer in the headlight. We see these problems so overwhelming. And we have these tsunamis in our own life, as I mentioned before. But I love what Jesus said after he appeared before his disciples. When they were all scared, locked in the room, he was present, he showed up, he revealed himself, and he said, hey, don't stay in your fear, but go. You're sent as I was sent. And that's the same thing for us. And so, but Martin Luther King said this. He said in his whole fight for justice, his whole movement, he says, we see the staircase, and we see the top of the staircase, and it's like, how in the world am I going to get to the top of the staircase? And that's how many of us are. I'm the same way, and I've been doing this for many years. I've been to 70 countries. Sometimes I feel the same way, and I feel overwhelmed. And I have to remind myself what Martin Luther King said. It's so brilliant, so poignant. He says, don't look at the top of the staircase. Just look at the first step. We can all take a first step. We can, and we can take a step with our pocketbook, with our passport. Only 15% of Americans own a passport. We can get into these parts of the world with our presence, with our ability to be present in these parts of the world.
Well, that's Joel Vestal, and you can see that he's passionate and competent to allow you to connect with some of the people around the world who could benefit from your friendship, and frankly, you'll benefit from theirs. So that's Joel Vestal. You can pick up information about him over at servelife.org or follow all the radio show stuff. Joel, thanks for being in. We'll see you tonight.
Thank you.
And good things going on over at Serve Life. We'll be back with natural health coach Shelley Pagitt here after the break.